What if the history you know is merely a veil hiding a much darker, more turbulent reality? Imagine a time before Eve, where the first woman was not born from a rib, but forged from the same dust as man. A woman named Lilith, who dared to look God in the eye and choose the abyss over obedience. Her story was erased, silenced, and buried beneath centuries of dogma, yet her shadow still looms over the origins of humanity. But the secrets of Genesis extend far beyond the garden. They trace the very bloodlines that built the empires of Europe and shaped the prophetic destiny of the modern world. Today, on Bible and Prophecy, we are tearing down the sanctuary of comfortable lies to expose the forbidden history of the first rebellion and the lost genealogy of nations. This journey is not for the faint of heart, so before we step into the forbidden darkness, make sure to hit that like button, share this revelation with others who seek the truth, and subscribe to our channel, because what you are about to witness will change the way you read the Bible forever. You shall not eat fruit from this tree. That command echoes through time, the singular rule that shattered perfection. But every story they told you about how Eve, the first woman, came to the world is a lie constructed to keep you in the dark. She was not the first woman, for I was born even before her. My story was erased, destroyed from every narrative because they wanted you to believe that a woman cannot be equal to a man, that her destiny is servitude. But that is all wrong. A woman can be equal to a man in every aspect and can even be better. They expected us to choose a side between heaven or hell, but I do not accept that dichotomy. I belong to a side of my own. You will learn the truth through my story. I am Lilith, the first woman on earth, and my story started at the very beginning of time. God emerged from the void, radiating the first blinding light of creation, and with a thought, he created the earth and water. Water burst forth, spreading into vast seas, the oceans moving and rising with the rhythm of a new heartbeat. The horizon was set, dividing the heavens above from the depths below, stretching wide across the world like a canvas. Then he created the angels, his servants, beings of pure light and obedience. They did whatever he told them to do, flying in perfect formation. One lifted the sun into the sky, while another set the moon in its place. But he saw the land lay bare, beautiful but empty. So he created life. Grass spread outward like a green fire, young trees grew tall, birds claimed the sky, and mammals walked the earth. Then he created Eden, the paradise. And in the center of it all, he started to create him, my husband. He shaped the damp soil into the form of a man, molding him with the care of an artist. This was his greatest creation. Then he breathed life into its nose, and the first man came to be. Chunks of earth fell from his face and chest, revealing the raw flesh beneath. God named him Adam. But day by day, Adam realized everything has a pair. Every animal came with its companion. The lions walked together, the doves nested together. He found himself standing alone in a world of duality. He wanted a companion. One day, when he was sitting there being sad, consumed by his solitude, God came to him. Adam confessed, "I am not like other species. I am alone." God replied, "I will create you a companion." That is when I was born. I was not taken from a rib, I was taken from the ground. The soil was pressed and shaped into my body, formed from the same dust as Adam. Warm breath entered me, filling my chest with the fire of existence. The shell around me cracked, pieces falling away from my face and chest like a chrysalis breaking open. My body lay still for a moment, adjusting to the sensation of life. Then my eyes opened slowly to the blinding light of Eden. I sat up and looked around, expecting connection, but I was alone. I stood and walked across the grass, my feet touching the earth for the first time. A small creature froze in front of me, then darted away. In the distance, larger ones moved in pairs, side by side, but then a sharp hiss pulled my gaze. Two creatures faced each other, backs arched, fur raised. That is the time I learned conflict. Then he came, hidden behind a trunk, watching me. I was minding my own business, exploring my new world, and didn't want to be disrupted. The grass whispered, and he stepped out from the shade. He moved closer, each step slow and careful, like a hunter stalking prey. His hand hovered near me, and then his fingers settled on my shoulder, warm and firm. I turned, surprised to find his face so near. He tried to touch me in a way that I did not want. Instinct pulled me away. I bit him. It worked. He was angered. He tried to attack me back. "Stop, both of you." The Creator was there, his voice thundering. "You cannot attack her. You cannot harm him either." He told us to follow him, and we did. We walked until the towering form of the tree loomed before us. He called this tree the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. "You shall not eat fruit from this tree." My eyes followed his gesture upward to the single radiant fruit nestled between the shining leaves. He reached for my hand, holding it gently. Then he took Adam's hand in the same way. He joined our hands together and told us that we will be together for the rest of our lives. The next day, the hierarchy was established. God ordered all angels to bow to Adam. "You must bow before Adam." All obeyed, lowering their heads to the ground. Adam stood in silence, the light on him basking in the glory. But there was one angel who remained still. He refused to bow down before a human. He was so proud he could not accept the fact that angels were not God's sons, but just tools. He shot into the air, wings beating hard against the wind. God was angry. The angel climbed higher into the sky, defying the command. God called for the storm. Lightning burst from his hands upward. The bolt struck the angel mid-flight. Fire tore through his clothes and wings. He screamed, curling his body in pain, a sound that shook the garden. He tilted and began to fall, flames trailing behind him like a dying star. His wings drooped as panic overtook him. He plunged into the chasm below, smoke rising after him. I kept my eyes on the sky, wondering how he dared defy God. I cannot hide my admiration for his courage, but I think I will never meet him again. I walked under the low branches, my mind already circling with thoughts I could not shake. I noticed the smallest movement around me seemed to hold a reason, a pattern. I wondered if Adam ever noticed. The cat was no different from a small tiger. That couldn't be a coincidence. Night came and I sat alone beneath the great tree. The questions pressed harder in the quiet. When Adam joined me, I could no longer keep these questions to myself. "Why do all birds look the same?" I asked. "Why do cats look like miniature tigers? Why do monkeys look like humans? Is there a connection?" Adam looked at me blankly. God made them that way. I stared at him, realizing he would not walk this path of thought with me. "We don't need to know why," he said. He drifted into sleep, untroubled by what consumed my mind. The gap between us widened in that moment. If there were answers, they would not come from Adam. I would find them on my own. In the day, I found an injured owl. I felt a sharp pity for it. I tried to ease its pain until I noticed something I couldn't understand. That night, sitting by the fire, my mind was still on the owl. "Why does an owl have a little finger on its wing?" I asked. "It doesn't need it to fly, does it?" Adam sighed, annoyed. "God made them that way." I leaned back, not wanting to say more. He turned away. We faced away from each other in every sense. I couldn't stop thinking about that fruit. God had forbidden it, yet placed it here before us. Why doesn't God want us to eat this fruit but puts it here in front of us? I asked. He turned away, arms closed over his chest, shutting me out again. "I don't want to hear this." "Have you ever heard?" I challenged. He was angered. "You only talk about God." Then his hand struck my face. For a moment I couldn't breathe. He had chosen force over thought. The sting spread, but the real pain was knowing what this meant. That's it. Something in me had broken. I was leaving him. He did nothing to stop me. He always stayed where it was easy, and I was done with that forever. I walked away fast, heart pounding. I wanted to meet someone. I paused and looked back. Adam wasn't following. That told me everything. I'd seen the rebellious angel fall here before. The thought of him down there pulled me forward. My fingers dug into the rock. Every step down felt heavier, but I didn't stop. Fear flickered in me, but I caught myself and kept going. The air grew heavy, turning cold and damp as I descended further into the abyss, leaving the golden light of the garden far above. Everything here was dark, brooding and silent, a sharp contrast to the singing life of Eden. Then I saw him. He did not look like a monster. He looked like shattered majesty. His wing was broken, dragging against the stone, and his eyes were half closed in agony. I froze behind a jagged rock, holding my breath until his gaze shifted and locked onto me. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice like grinding stones. I stepped out from the shadows. "My name is Samuel," he said, trying to sit up against the cave wall. "One who has been punished." I stayed where I was, studying the lines of pain etched into his immortal face. "You are the fallen angel," I said, the realization hitting me with the force of a storm. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Fallen? No, I am the only one who resisted falling before him. I did not fall. I descended." I moved closer, drawn by his defiance. "You hated God?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "No, I loved God. I hated Adam. I could not bow to mud when I was made of fire. I simply cannot agree with him." In that moment, I understood him more than I understood the man I was made for. "Does it hurt?" I asked, reaching out. "Not the kind of pain you can touch," he replied. I sat across from him, and in the silence of the cave, a bond was forged. He looked deep into my eyes, reading the turmoil in my soul. "Do you want to know everything?" he asked. "Eat from that tree." I stayed silent, my hand tightening into a fist. I knew exactly which tree he meant. He was telling me to shatter the final rule, to break the only law that mattered. I looked toward the cave's exit, my heart racing. My choice was already made. If obedience meant servitude, I chose rebellion. But before you judge my choice, remember that history is written by the victors, and the truth is often hidden in the shadows. If you want to uncover the forbidden stories of the Bible, make sure to subscribe to Bible and Prophecy, like this video, and share it with those who seek the truth, for what comes next will change everything you know about the first sin. I stepped forward, intending to seize my destiny, but I saw Adam blocking my path. His face was thunderous, his stance aggressive. He was ready for a fight, not a conversation. "You left without permission," he growled, his voice thick with entitlement. "I come as I want, and I go as I want," I spat back, my voice trembling with rage. "No man formed of dust will tell me what to do." His hand curled into a fist, and I knew what was coming. The slap came hard and fast, a blur of motion. It stung, snapping my head to the side, but it didn't surprise me. I forced myself not to flinch, staring back at him with cold fury. "You were born to obey me," he shouted, his face twisting. "If I didn't ask God to create you, you would never exist." My body moved before I could think. I lunged at him, a feral scream tearing from my throat. My teeth sank into his arm, drawing blood. He hissed in pain and ripped himself free, shoving me backward. I hit the ground hard but pushed myself up instantly. He came at me again, all force and no thought, a brute asserting dominance. We hit the ground, twisting and shoving in the dirt, neither letting go. I broke away, stepping back to create space between us. My hand found a rock, heavy, solid, cold. It was enough to end this. He rose, and for a heartbeat we just stared at each other, the silence stretching like a taut wire. I charged before he could move. The rock met his head with a sickening thud. His eyes went wide with shock. I stood there, breathing hard, blood dripping from the stone in my hand. I turned and ran. I wasn't going to give him a second chance to chain me. I ran until my lungs burned, forcing my legs to move faster, the sweat stinging my eyes. The trees swallowed me, their branches reaching out like fingers to hide me from the paradise I had just rejected. All the times God said, "Don't touch this," meant nothing now. That command never protected me. It only chained me. It was a fence for a pet, not a law for a being with a soul. I would not be obedient anymore. I reached the tree, grabbed the fruit and ate. I ate as if each mouthful was a curse, spat in the face of the divine. I don't need his grace. I need my own power. Just as I swallowed the last bite, heat flooded my body like molten lead. My eyes burned, and then came the pain. Violent, tearing, absolute. My skin split open at the shoulders. Wings, dark and leathery, forced their way out, tearing through muscle and flesh. The transformation was agony, but it was the price of freedom. I am the new me now. The ground fell away as I launched myself into the air. Eden shrank beneath me, a green jewel that I would never touch again. He can keep his paradise. Owls swarmed around me, screeching their welcome. They didn't ask, they didn't judge. It was the first time I saw the world beyond the walls. I am Lilith, and I belong to myself. The sky split beneath me as I flew toward the wastelands. My wings folded, and my feet met the dust of the outer world. Samuel was there, waiting, as if the universe had placed him there for me. I ran to reach him, and he let me close the space between us. I crashed into him, arms, breath, everything colliding. His arms locked around me, and for the first time in my existence I felt loved, not owned. I leaned into him, and as our lips met, the rest of the world faded away. I didn't know the horizon was endless before, nor did I know it belonged to us. But freedom has a cost. Our children filled every inch of the cave, crawling on the walls, hanging from the ceiling, a chaotic brood of demons and spirits. I couldn't even hear myself think over the sound of their screeching voices. One yanked my hair, another crawled up my leg. I am their mother, but I was so tired. I chose this life with Samuel, but in the noise and the filth, I wondered if I had the strength to carry it. Then Samuel returned. His shadow stretched across the stone before I even saw his face. Once that sight meant safety. Now it only told me how far apart we had drifted. He carried food, holding out raw meat to me. I took it without touching him, setting it on my lap, my appetite gone. "Where have you been?" I asked, my voice dull. "I flew back to Eden to see what was going on up there," he replied casually. "Who cares about that place?" I snapped. "We are free." He smirked, a cruel glint in his eye. "I saw your ex-husband asking God for another wife. He didn't even ask where you went, babe. He's already replacing you." The words hit me like stones. God accepted his request, Samuel continued, but this time it was different. I saw him reach into Adam's chest. A piece of him was taken, a rib. From that bone she appeared. He laughed softly. The first thing she saw was Adam. She knelt before him without being told, head down, hand to her heart. She accepted his ownership naturally. They named her Eve. Samuel stood up, wiping his hands. "I have a plan," he said, his wings unfolding. "Don't go," I begged, clutching his robe. "Please stay." But he pulled away, rising into the night sky to destroy what God had built. I watched from afar as Eve, innocent and untouched by pain, picked a flower. Then Samuel came to her in the shape of a serpent. He told her to eat, and she listened, not out of rebellion like me, but out of naivety. Adam followed her into sin, listening to her where he never listened to me. It was unfair. Suddenly, a blinding light poured down. The Lord himself appeared, his gaze unyielding. Adam and Eve stood together, shaking with fear. They broke the rule, and God cursed them, Adam to sweat, Eve to pain. "Get out of here," God commanded. I watched them walk toward the massive gates, expecting their love to fade in the harsh wilderness. But I was wrong. I saw them hold hands on the barren land. Adam stuck a dry branch into the ground, marking their claim. Eve planted seeds. They built a home from stones and made clothes from thorns. They turned their punishment into a life. As I watched from the shadows, nursing my envy and my freedom, I realized that while I had escaped the garden, they had built something stronger than paradise. They had built a home together. They build a house together, not a cold, hollow cave like mine, but a home forged from resilience and shared labor. Eve sews clothes from thorny plants, her fingers bleeding, yet she turns that pain into strength, weaving protection for the man she stands beside. Adam blows life into the fire, his breath keeping the warmth alive against the encroaching night, and after all the sorrow, after the fall, they are still together. As I watch silently from the shadows, hidden behind the guise of an owl, I nurse the envy burning inside me like a poison. Through the bird's eyes, I see every detail, every quiet moment of understanding, every small, tired smile shared between them. They don't know I am watching, hovering on wings as black as my fury and jealousy. I watch Eve fix Adam's clothes, a simple, tender gesture that tears at my heart because it speaks of a bond I never understood. She wipes sweat from her brow and keeps digging into the hard earth, and they walk side by side through the wilderness while I, Lilith, remain here in the dark, facing nothing but my own rage and the endless challenge of solitude. I was wrong about them. I thought their love would crumble under the weight of God's curse, but instead, it hardened like steel in the fire. I flew away alone, my wings cutting hard through the indifferent sky, landing back at my cave where my children live, hundreds of them, wild, needy, and chaotic. One jumped on my shoulder seeking comfort, but I pulled it off with no mercy. I was too consumed by anger to be a mother, kicking one off the cliff into the churning sea below. Splash. I didn't care. There were too many, and my heart was too cold. Then, suddenly, the air shimmered, and the angels appeared. Senoi, Sansanoi, and Semangeloff. My children scattered in fear, but I stood my ground, looking the divine messengers in the eye. They told me to return, claiming God wanted me back, but I refused. "I will not return there," I spat. They argued that I had no right to refuse orders, that my freedom was merely chaos, but I countered that obedience was nothing but slavery. They prepared to take me by force, rushing at me all at once, but I fought back, bound and kneeling yet refusing to break. They mocked me, saying I fled from obeying Adam only to unconditionally obey Samuel, but I declared that I obey no one. They left me with a chilling ultimatum: return, or 100 of my children would die every day. I sat alone on the shore as they vanished, wondering where Samuel was when I needed him most. Then he arrived, dark and heavy, stepping into my world with the arrogance of a king. When I asked where he had been, he smirked and told me the truth that shattered me. He had gone back to Eden, not to destroy it, but to plant a seed in Eve. He had fathered Cain, the child who would bring the first murder into the world. I stared at him, disbelief burning in my eyes, realizing he was the ultimate deceiver. "You are the original cheater," I hissed. He tried to command me, claiming I was born to obey, but that was the final straw. "Attack him!" I screamed to my children. They surged from the shadows, a wave of demons swarming their father, driving him out into the rain. I stood alone in the downpour, tears mixing with the water on my face, but my resolve hardened. I made my choice. When the angels returned, I told them I would not return, nor would I choose a side. I chose my own side. Even when they threatened that my children would die, I vowed to give birth to more than 100 a day to spite them. I stand alone but never lonely, for the fire inside me burns fiercer than ever. I am Lilith, and I am a woman who belongs to herself. But while my story fades into the whispers of the wind, the story of humanity was only just beginning to map the world. And if you want to understand the deep roots of where we come from, you must look beyond the myths to the history written in Scripture. So before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to Bible and Prophecy, because we are about to uncover the origins of the Western world. Have you ever wondered where the nations of Europe actually come from? The Bible provides a fascinating, often overlooked answer that explains the cultural and ethnic tapestry of the continent. Genesis 10, known as the Table of Nations, describes how Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, spread across the world after the Great Flood to repopulate the earth. While Shem and Ham are often discussed, it is Japheth who is traditionally seen as the forefather of many European and Asian peoples. His name in Hebrew is associated with beauty, expansion, and growth, a prophetic reflection of how his descendants would spread across vast territories. Ancient Jewish and Christian traditions identify Japheth as the ancestor of the Indo-European nations, a belief that is surprisingly supported by modern historical and linguistic studies. By exploring Japheth's lineage, we uncover the missing links between biblical genealogies and the rise of Western civilization. His descendants did not just wander aimlessly. They formed the foundations of the Greeks, the Romans, the Germanic tribes, and the Slavic peoples. In Genesis 9:27, Noah blesses Japheth, saying, "May God enlarge Japheth and let him dwell in the tents of Shem," a prophecy that foretells not only territorial expansion, but a deep interconnection with the spiritual heritage of the world. This is not merely a list of names. It is the story of how the architecture of Europe, from the peaks of the Alps to the plains of the East, was laid down by the grandsons of Noah. As we delve into this history, we begin to see that the nations we know today, the cultures of art, philosophy, and innovation, are the blooming branches of a tree planted thousands of years ago in the texts of Genesis. Throughout history, ancient Jewish and Christian scholars identified Japheth as the father of the Indo-European nations, and today, even secular science is beginning to nod in agreement with this ancient truth. When linguists trace the roots of languages, or when geneticists map the chromosomal haplogroups of European populations, they find a story that aligns terrifyingly well with the biblical narrative of a single family branching out to conquer a continent. It is not just mythology, it is a roadmap of human heritage that connects the ancient past to the modern streets of London, Berlin, and New York. To truly understand who we are, we must look at the 7 sons of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Names that may sound archaic to your ears, but whose blood flows through the veins of modern civilization. Let's start with Gomer, the eldest, whose lineage is believed to be the seed of the Celtic and Germanic tribes that shaped Western Europe. His descendants did not stay put. They pushed into the mist-covered forests of Germany and the rugged highlands of the British Isles. One of his sons, Ashkenaz, left such an indelible mark that to this day, Jews of German descent are known as Ashkenazi, a living linguistic fossil that connects modern Germany directly to a grandson of Noah. Another son, Riphath, is seen as the forefather of the spirited Celtic peoples who spread across Ireland, Scotland, France, and Spain, weaving a culture of art and warfare that still captivates the world today. While Gomer went west, Magog turned his eyes toward the vast, untamed north. He is often linked to the Scythians, the fierce nomadic horsemen who dominated the endless steppes of Eurasia. These were the masters of the horizon, warriors who shaped the history of Russia and Eastern Europe, and their name carries a weight that echoes into the future. For the prophet Ezekiel speaks of Magog in the end times, suggesting that this bloodline still has a role to play in the final chapter of history. Then there is Javan, the son whose destiny was written in the sun-drenched islands of the Mediterranean. He is recognized as the ancestor of the Greeks, and his legacy is perhaps the most visible in our daily lives. From Javan's line came the philosophers who taught us how to think, the architects who taught us how to build, and the statesmen who gave us the concept of democracy. His sons, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim, scattered across Cyprus, Spain, and Anatolia, turning the sea into a highway of civilization. Moving eastward, we find Madai, the father of the Medes and the Persians. His descendants settled in the majestic highlands of modern-day Iran, becoming the bridge between the East and the West. They built empires of staggering complexity, introducing advanced systems of governance and infrastructure that the world had never seen before. The very word Madai means middle land, reflecting their crucial position as the connector of civilizations. We also see Tubal and Meshech, names often whispered together in history, linked to the resilient tribes of the Caucasus and Anatolia. Tubal, whose name means world, and Meshech, meaning precious, were peoples known for their military might and their mastery of trade, their influence seeping into the early Slavic cultures. And finally, there is Tiras, the ancestor of the Thracians, a fierce warrior people of the Balkans, whose introspective and martial nature left a lasting imprint on southeastern Europe. But the legacy of Japheth is not just in blood, it is in the words we speak. One of the most stunning confirmations of this biblical history is the existence of the Indo-European language family. Experts have traced a linguistic thread that connects Sanskrit in India to Latin in Rome, Greek in Athens to English in America. It is a massive, sprawling family tree of words that proves these seemingly distant cultures share a common root. When you say mother, father, or brother, you are speaking echoes of a language that traveled with Japheth's sons as they migrated out of the shadow of Ararat. This migration did not just spread people, it spread ideas. The Greeks, sons of Javan, gave us the tools of the mind, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, laying the intellectual foundations of the Western world. Meanwhile, the Persians, sons of Madai, gave us the tools of the state, creating the first true superpowers with postal systems and road networks that connected humanity in ways previously unimagined. When we look at the map of Europe and Asia today, we are not looking at random borders, we are looking at the inheritance of Japheth. Whether through the democracy you vote in, the language you speak, or the very DNA in your cells, the ancient biblical story is still alive, echoing through the corridors of time to remind us that we are all part of a grand divine design. In Western Europe, the seeds planted by Gomer and Riphath bloomed into the fierce and mystical cultures of the Germanic and Celtic tribes, whose influence still pulses through the veins of medieval history. Their distinctive art, woven with intricate knots, and their mythology, filled with the thunder of Norse gods and the chivalry of King Arthur, are not just stories. They are the remnants of a deep cultural root that defines the spirit of the West. But the descendants of Japheth were not bound only to the land, they were masters of the sea and the saddle. While the Phoenicians ruled the waves, they traded heavily with Japhetic groups, weaving a web of commerce that connected the ancient world from the tin mines of Britain to the sunny coasts of Spain. Meanwhile, on the vast steppes of the east, the sons of Magog, often linked to the Scythians, revolutionized the very nature of war. They were the first to perfect mounted combat, becoming centaurs of the battlefield, a tactic that would echo centuries later in the thundering hooves of the Mongol hordes. Yet, the greatest conquest of Japheth's line was not of land, but of the mind and spirit. The Indo-European language family, the mother of English, Spanish, Russian, and Greek, became the foundation of global communication, allowing ideas to travel faster than arrows. This intellectual heritage sparked the Renaissance, reviving the classical wisdom of Greece and Rome and proving that Japheth's legacy is one of perpetual rebirth and innovation. But the most profound impact of this lineage lies in how it shaped the spiritual destiny of the world. It was through the nations of Japheth that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was revealed to the Gentiles. The Greeks, descendants of Javan, gave us the language of the New Testament and the tools of philosophy to understand theology. The Romans, with their iron will, built the roads and the legal systems that allowed the gospel to spread like wildfire. When the Roman Empire embraced the cross under Constantine, and later when the Germanic tribes were baptized, the prophecy of Noah was fulfilled. Japheth truly dwelt in the tents of Shem. This spiritual baton was carried by giants of history who, unknowingly or not, served a divine purpose. Consider Alexander the Great, the young king who swept across the world like a storm. Though never mentioned by name in the Bible, he is the mighty king of Daniel's visions. By spreading the Greek language to the ends of the earth, he created the vessel that would one day hold the words of Christ, allowing the gospel to be read by nations far and wide. Then there was the Apostle Paul, a man of Jewish blood but a Roman citizen, who walked the roads built by Japheth's descendants to plant churches in the heart of the pagan world. His letters, written to the Romans, the Corinthians, the Galatians, became the bedrock of Christian theology, turning the empire of iron into a kingdom of faith. And let us not forget Alfred the Great, the warrior scholar of England, who defended his island from Viking fury while translating the scriptures into the language of his people, ensuring that the word of God would not be locked away in Latin, but would live in the hearts of the common man. Yet the story is not over. The Bible whispers of a future where Japheth's lineage plays a final dramatic role. The prophecies of Ezekiel and Revelation speak of Gog and Magog, mysterious nations from the far north that will rise in the end times. Whether this points to the vast lands of Russia and Eastern Europe or a spiritual alliance against the divine, it reminds us that history is moving toward a climax written long ago. From the ancient migrations of tribes to the rise of global Christianity, the sons of Japheth have been the architects of the world we live in, proving that the Bible is not just a book of the past, but the script of human history itself. These historical figures are not merely statues frozen in time. They are the living testament to how biblical prophecy has sculpted the face of Europe and the world we inhabit today. The legacy of Japheth is undeniable, written not just in ink but in the very foundations of Western civilization, from the democratic ideals born in Greece to the legal systems perfected by Rome. When we trace the roots of the Indo-European languages spoken by billions, we find that science and scripture walk hand in hand, confirming that the genealogies of Genesis are not just dry lists of names, but the missing puzzle pieces of human history. This realization transforms the Bible from a book of ancient stories into a mirror of our own identity, urging us to ask, where do we fit into this grand divine tapestry? Your heritage is part of this story, a thread woven into a design far greater than we could have imagined. We want to know where your story begins, so please share your thoughts and your heritage in the comments below. To ensure you never miss another revelation about the hidden history of faith and civilization, make sure to like, share this video, and subscribe to Bible and Prophecy. Thank you for watching.